So, hello, everybody. Here we are again for another of our series of interviews in preparation for the Bitcoin Fest, which is now getting closer and closer. In fact, it's now going to be here on Saturday. We're still looking for subscribers, so anyone who's watching this on YouTube after the live stream, please subscribe. That would be most appreciated. If we can get to 1,000 before Saturday, that would be seriously awesome. So, thank you so much for that. This evening, we're going to be speaking to Josh Fitzgerald, who is the director of FTZ Studios. And he's going to be looking after some of the media aspect of the event to give us a record of it and to record it for us for prosperity. So, often with these things, the speakers get a lot of attention, but less attention is often given to the people who are working behind the scenes. And, it's a little bit like a duck paddling on the surface of the river. Everything looks really serene, but everything's happening madly behind the scenes. And so I thought it was only just that we gave some of our backstage organizers some credit and find out a little bit about what they do and the businesses they work for, because of course a lot of this is a passion project for all of us. We're all giving our time voluntarily to try and make this a success, and so it's only fair that you learn about the generous individuals who are helping us and a little bit more about their businesses, so that if you like what we do, you might want to approach them in the future for some work. So I'm going to pass over to you, Josh. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your business and how you came to be involved with Bitcoin Fest?
Yeah, sure. So, no, thank you for having me, Victoria. It's an absolute pleasure. So I run a video production company. It's a company based in Northampton. We've been a video production business for 10 years, and we've worked with some big names: NHS, TikTok, Playboy, KFC. So we've worked with some big names over the last decade, mainly focusing on brand overview videos, market research content, and lots of variety. So I've been a Bitcoiner since 2017, when I originally first bought my bit of Bitcoin. And what happened there was I bought a bit and then I didn't buy any more for about 3 years, which I massively regret. And I'm sure loads of people feel the same way. And then it got to the last bull run and I was like, do you know what? I'm not going to buy this time round. So I've spoken to a few people that have been in a similar situation where they bought it early 2017.
Yeah, life just gets too busy and you forget if it's not a priority. Yeah,
it does as well. Yeah, and I think it was one of those things where, like, well, that'd be close to 8 years ago now. It was a very different situation, and I don't know how you got introduced to Bitcoin, but it was originally Ray blocks for me, where it was, or Nano, where you could it was a shit coin, so to speak. I don't know if you're allowed to say. And ultimately, what that was, it introduced me to cryptocurrency and what it was capable of, and therefore then Bitcoin.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then I've been going to the Northamptonshire Bitcoin meetup, where Sai is the guy that runs it there, and he also runs Bitcoin Events UK. Who then introduced me to Chris, and then the rest is history. The difficult thing with this kind of situation is that we've never put on an event like this. Yep. We have no promotional materials to get people there. So it's always tricky, the first one. So what my job is to collate all the best possible footage, all the speakers, to create enough promotional video content to fill it up next year. So although this year, you can't really do too much about it because you haven't got that footage or those photos and whatnot. But we're hoping to gather, here just in front of me, we've got 6-7 speakers. We're hoping to get sort of 5 or 6 60-second videos edited from each of those speakers, as well as an event highlight reel. You've got yourself doing a live feed. We want to interview some of the public as well, because it's obviously at the same time as a football match. Maybe get some controversial opinions on Bitcoin, or maybe some funny clips of the public not knowing or knowing what it is, and just gather as much content as possible so we can promote next year's event.
Fantastic. And what great news for everybody that we are planning to do another bigger and better event next year. And this event is all in preparation for that as well. And I hear through the grapevine that actually you are responsible for our snazzy name, the Bitcoin Fest. They were debating what to call it, and you came up with that. Is that correct?
I can't take the full credit. No, it was a suggestion.
Was it? Okay. But I
take a bit of credit. This is why I want to get involved in something like this. And like you said earlier, like a passion project. It's a case of what I'm interested in Bitcoin. I can see it growing in the future. I accept it, although no one's bought video productions off me with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something within a community that I felt welcome in,
Yeah.
and in a community that it's just something positive. It's just generally something to offer my time to positively.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the Bitcoin Fest, I think originally it was just going to be an event, and that's where we were kind of like discussing, like the four of us. Well, could it be bigger, something bigger? Could you have like think 5-10 years from now, if all goes well, can you have Bitcoin Fest all on the same weekend, all around the country? Can you have a big one in like major cities? It can be a brand that can grow as fast as Bitcoin, especially because Sai obviously has got the Bitcoin Events UK website, which is like, well, that's kind of fluke that he runs the Northamptonshire networking event. But
I don't believe in flukes or coincidences.
Yeah, I was quite surprised, to be fair. I was like, he runs the actual Bitcoin Events UK website. So that's like handy. And I think these guys are leading the way in Bitcoin events, which will hopefully get bigger and bigger as time goes on. I can't imagine it not, to be fair. As long as it keeps going the way it's going, it's just patience, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's great to see something established in the UK, because for a long time they had the CoinFest, and we used to have an annual event in Manchester, but I wouldn't say it was something around the UK. And I think, by the end of it, the organisers of that were just getting a little bit tired and feeling a little bit disillusioned. And it's almost like we've had to wait for the next euphoria and bull run for it to really start taking off in the UK. And you're right, I think having Sai, who's connected with all the different meetups and supporting those, and I don't know if you watched my interview with him where he got linked up with the guy who was distributing the books, all of these connections are starting to come together. And of course it's so great to kind of have the first event like this in the Midlands, because so often they're in London or in Edinburgh. It's like, guys, can't you have something accessible in the Midlands? Then everyone can go.
It is about that. And like when you compare it to, I listen to Simply Bitcoin. That's my podcast of choice. And they're always going on about all these events. Like you have like the Nashville event this year, like Bitcoin. There's the one in Amsterdam at the end of the year, which I'd like to go to. But you hear all these glamorous events and you're like, hang on a minute, is there really like something Bitcoin focused in the UK, which is completely Bitcoin, run by arguably the people trying hardest to create a Bitcoin focused event? It's just be interesting to see where it goes. And like I love growing stuff from nothing. I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. I love growing something from nothing and having a hand at the challenge of building something from nothing. So I do get my kicks out of that. And it should be fun.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be really fun. And I was asking Chris and Mitch, I was like, so how did you come up with the name of the Bitcoin Fest? And they said, oh yeah, we think it's Josh's idea. I was like, that's so cool. Because of course you do, you hear the name, it's just like, it sounds like fun. Just the name sounds like fun. And because of course it's shortened for festival. And then of course you've got the logo with the football. I think you had some help from Mitch with that one. But yeah, I just love the fact that we've got all these creative people discussing these ideas and really passionate about Bitcoin, trying to get it going and getting people together. And what's amazing for me, I being part of the Nottingham meetup group, what I've just noticed is that people really want to get involved. There was a member of our group, Chris was talking about, should we have a magician? And he wasn't sure whether or not it fit within his budget. And then someone piped up and said, I know some magicians, I'll pay for it. That'll be my contribution. I was like, that is just so amazing. And the thing is, once people start doing that, it's like a roller coaster, because people witness that. And then it's like, well, what can I do? And, what can I do? And so,
it's really great. And something that interests me as well about this sort of situation is like, what's our incentive? Like, why are we doing it? Like, because we're obviously putting in so much time, and like one part of you is like to introduce more people to Bitcoin, and one part of you is to I do genuinely think it's to grow something. Like, regardless of what it is, it's an interest that we've all found, which is barely found interest because it's only X amount of years old. So we're not many people have been involved in it their whole life. So it's a newfound interest with people with similar interests that want to grow something from nothing. And the fact that Bitcoin is that interest is fantastic. And it allows people to work together to create something that other people can find an interest. Because I'll be honest, I find it difficult to find something that I've been so interested in for the last few years. A lot of Bitcoiners do say this, like, I'm very much, I like to have my fingers in lots of pies, and like I like to get involved. But something that I've really devoured, I suppose, is Bitcoin. Like slightly obsessive about it, especially the last 3 years, where it becomes a bit too much. You're reading about any bit of spare time. I'm just like reading either like bits of Reddit, just learning what people's opinions are on certain elements, or following certain influencers and whatnot, Bitcoin influencers, or listen to podcasts. And there's no real, it's really difficult to explain, isn't it? Like why we're doing it. Like it's apart from wanting to feel a part within that community, which is great.
Yeah, well, there are so many elements to it, because the thing is, you can understand one aspect of it, but of course, then it leads you down so many other rabbit holes. And for a lot of people, you know, I mean, you have people like Martin Lewis who say, you know, we need to teach kids more about money in school, but he's talking about the fact that he's talking about teaching them how to use credit cards and get mortgages. And it's just like the whole subject of money is way bigger than that. And actually, the fact that we're not told about it, quite frankly, I think is a result of the government trying to gaslight us. They'd maintain until they're blue in the face that they didn't do it deliberately, but quite frankly, when you start looking into it, it's just like, if I was them, I'd be doing it deliberately. So
well, yeah, it's crazy. Like we don't want to use the word conspiracy theorist, but at the same time, when the government have been proven to be lying to you over years, like even like the simple thing of inflation, like inflation, I've just always known that was how it was. Like I can't really tell you a time where I learned that information, or I just learned things go up in price over hundreds of years. You talk to your grandparents and they're like, oh, back in my day it was X amount for this, but you don't really know why. It's just how it was. And then you start reading about it, and suddenly it's like floodgates. You're like, okay. And then you hear about bankers. I heard about this banker in Australia a few weeks ago they've got a secret recording of him in a meeting basically saying, yeah, we're pretty close to the central printer, so yeah, we don't need to worry about money. Everyone's laughing and jovial. And like, you can say this to like people and they don't believe it, or they believe it and don't want to believe it. But I don't know, it gets really shady. It's like the more you learn about it, and I think that is a part of the situation as well. It's kind of like if I'm being lied to about that, the money I use, why would I trust anything that comes out of your mouth? Like with regards to the government. And there's elements of like the World Economic Forum and like how much they're investing. I've read something about they're investing 15 million in cattle tracking or something, which basically involves monitoring cattle and consumption, and this control element of the UK government and global governments, and even UK councils. My council, Northamptonshire, has gone through several rebrands and changes due to mismanagement, or whatever they want to call it. And it's just like, just do your jobs. So if they haven't been able to, and then Bitcoin comes along, and it means people don't need to, so they can just buy Bitcoin, and then it's hopefully like, I don't know how invested everyone is, but it's a kind of, you've got to trust it, haven't you?
Yeah. Well, I think part of the problem is, you know, you hear of all these problems, but people find it really hard to conceptualize why it's going to become a problem, because they seem to have these problems and they always seem to get away with it, not realizing that they're getting away with it because they can just print more money to cover over it. But of course, every time they're doing that, they're stealing value from the rest of us. And then we all wonder why we're poor, you know? So, I mean,
and not raising things. And then there's the element of like if you think about house prices, for example, like the biggest sort of increase in expense, house prices aren't necessarily going up that well. They are going up, but the value of the money is going down so fast that the price of the house is going up so fast. And when I heard something the other day, and it was like, things aren't going up in price, the value of your money is going down. And then when that sort of like made sense, like clicked something in me. I was like, yeah, that is the case. Like there's just so much money being printed, which is hard to prove. Like they like fudge the numbers and brown envelopes, but it does happen. And you can't do that with Bitcoin. And when that was my selling point, really, you can't do that with Bitcoin. It's completely fixed in supply. That was my main. You can't cheat it.
And it's such a paradigm shift that for a lot of people, they're really going to struggle to get their head around it, because the thing is, once you realize that so much of the way in which our world is structured is influenced by the way in which our money is structured. So, for example, all of our welfare systems only exist because they created fiat currency. If we're still on the gold standard, they weren't able to do that. And so, if Bitcoin flips the way in which our money works, governments won't be able to be as large, but it also won't be able to support our welfare system. So we're going to have to find new ways of structuring those things. And a lot of people focus on the good side of how Bitcoin's going to change everything, but it presents us also with a number of challenges. And I think people are haven't quite grasped that. At the moment, we're still in this era of euphoria. It's just like, great, I've invested in Bitcoin, and my money's going up. But as this, and we want it to take off, because actually this restructuring of the world is a good thing, and it's going to have a number of positive implications, but it's going to be such a journey, and it's going to take a number of years, I think, for all of that to play out. But even when you think those things through and you understand what some of the more challenging aspects are, you realize that ultimately, it will end up with help us build better and stronger systems in the long run. And it's quite hard for a lot of people, I think, to grasp that. I mean, we're still in the stage where people are kind of like, what is this Bitcoin thing? And it's like history of money and software, and we're still in those early stages. But it's like you go like 10 or 100 steps ahead, and it's just like, wow, the world is just going to be so different. And it's really exciting, because when you understand what the destination is, and you realize, this is a journey that's going to be affecting us for the rest of our lives. And so what better thing to invest your time and your skills in helping to build the infrastructure of that new world. It really is quite exciting and quite promising.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's something I read, I can't remember where I read it, but it was talking about over the years of do you know how we used to have really fancy gutters on houses, and like really fancy benches or gargoyles, and the architecture of a building was like so much better than it is now. And that's because the amount of money that can be spent or time can be spent on an item. So even as time's gone on, the product that we have has got worse and worse. Like you could buy a toaster 50 years ago and it'd last you like 20 years, probably for the same price as you buy like a mediocre toaster that lasts you like a year now. And as time has gone on, the value of items has gone up, but the quality has gone down. And you're right, we do talk about the good Bitcoin can provide, but there will be a time. I don't think it's going to be a nice time, to be fair. Like there is going to be a day within the next 5 or 10 years where there needs to be some sort of drastic shift. But also I think it's personality based. Like I don't know whether you invested before Bitcoin or if you invested in anything before Bitcoin.
I wasn't really a big investor, so I was working as a dentist, and I had my own business, which obviously but it's a different kind of investment. I mean, investing in a business, I mean, as a business owner, you'll know yourself that actually investing in a business is a huge investment. But of course, if you make that investment and then you're getting money from your customers in fiat currency, it becomes much more challenging to kind of make the books balance, because of course you make the investment at year 1, but you're not really getting a payoff for your year 10. And how do you calculate inflation in that time, especially if inflation's speeding up? It actually becomes really, really challenging to run a business. And so actually that's part of what I focus on in my talks and when I educate people. It's very much about the business aspect of it and how this affects business owners. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the French Revolution was very much influenced by the devaluation of their currency. And that's one of the reasons why the innkeeper in Les Miserables was seen as such a rascal, because actually, he's trying to run a business with devalued currency, and how do you deliver a quality product nice to your patients when you've got, or your customers, when you've got all of those issues going on in the background, and everyone sees you as a villain because all they see is that you're continuously putting your prices up, but you're having to because the currency is being devalued in the background. And I didn't know that until I got involved with Bitcoin and someone pointed that out. I didn't even know that the French Revolution was connected to the fact that their currency had been completely destroyed during the Mississippi bubble 80 years previously. And so, I started going down the route of, financial history, and I was like, this is amazing. Why did they teach us this in school? This is really interesting. So, Yeah, that's now what I focus on and try and teach people, because, you know, if I'm interested, other people must be interested in these stories because they're so tangible. And
Yeah,
isn't
and
it
it's so
interesting that,
repetitive as well, isn't it? Multiple governments throughout the history of time have just fudged stuff and cheated, and that's what makes it so hard to explain to someone who's not into Bitcoin, because you can tell them the government are doing this, the government are doing that. Here's examples of where the previous governments over the last 100, 500 years have done similar things, and they're like, well, yeah, it won't be this government though. Like, and it's like, no, there's evidence to suggest that, and it's just getting worse and worse. And people know though the issue. That's the crazier thing. Like, if everything was fine
yeah,
and Bitcoin was just there running in the background, I suppose. Like I suppose it was. Well, actually, it wasn't actually, because since sort of 2008, it has kind of been. Although I started my business, I've run my business 10 years, and it's a service-based business in a growing market. So we have grown year on year, which is great. But I can imagine a lot of other businesses who aren't necessarily in a sector which is growing, a growing sector, completely relate to the fact that they're losing money. I've got a background in hospitality, and
okay,
like the energy crisis and the food costs and all these necessary costs where they are having to put their food up and their price of their dishes up. Customers aren't wanting to pay it, and then you're right, they are whinging to the restaurateur that they can't afford it. But
yeah.
it's
So we're
sad, yeah.
witnessing the early stages. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just I think it's just a very slow
yeah,
spiral. It's really sad. Like, and I feel without Bitcoin, I'll be honest, like it'd be challenged. Like every day would be such a grind. I can
it would be
see why
depressing
people think it would.
because
It's the
there'd be
only
no hope.
yeah, it's the only thing, like, as far as financial freedom, global balance, just government restructuring. Like, you see these countries like Argentina's done a bit of a U-turn recently. I read where he's kind of like wants it monitored or KYC. But El Salvador, for example, changing one of the highest rate murder capital countries in the world to a place where tourists can visit, and people are moving there from America. I don't know. Yeah, what was it? You fix the money, you fix the world, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to pick up on one of the things you said earlier, where you were pointing out that we've got to a stage now where things are, you know, it's like we've got access to all of these things, but the quality isn't the same that it was in the past. So again, you know, this is the side benefits supposedly of fiat currency. We've all been given access to cheap products, but of course with that comes the problem with the fact that you have this disposable culture. And so one of the problems we've got in the world is that you've got these rubbish tips everywhere from people buying clothes and only using them for a few months, whereas it used to be the case that just having fresh linen was hugely valuable. And so, you know, when you think about all of this waste that's generated by fiat currency, I mean, they like to focus on the fact that, you know, mining is a problem for global warming, but actually, if we shift the dynamics of the economy, you really reduce the problem with waste. And so ironically, having a deflationary currency is actually way better for the environment than having an inflationary currency. And again, you know, you hear the media focus on the kind of the story that they want to present to you as if, you know, Bitcoin is a bad thing. But actually, if you flip it on its head, it's just like, actually, you know, if you see it from this perspective, it's a different, but that's more complicated to explain. It's not as good a meme. And, you know, you need a bit more understanding to understand why that has the effect. And so, you know, these are all the problems, I think, when it comes to people understanding about Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily, it's just not in their nature, which is fine. Like, a lot of people, we didn't know how money works anyway, really. Like, that's normally how it goes. If I talk to someone, I've got some intelligent friends, they're not interested in Bitcoin, I always try and just I don't necessarily push it upon them. I just try and understand why they don't find it interesting. They invest in stocks, they
Yeah.
invest in shares, they invest in their pension, they buy houses. It's like,
Yeah.
what doesn't interest you about it? The general consensus is that it's a scam still, that I'm finding amongst my group, that it's a scam.
Yeah.
But the only reason I could see it being a scam is I think Jack Mallers, he said Bitcoin's been in a 15-year bull run. And he's
Yeah.
like, well, he's not wrong. Like, it's the highest it's ever been, like, in
Yeah.
15 years. At the same time, because it peaks so aggressively and crashes so aggressively, I think people can see that as losing value, where, like, these same people, they will be happy for their 5-10% return on investment, every year, even though inflation's like 3 to 10% depending on the year. And it's just not. It's just cultural change, isn't it? And it's learning about the history of money, which I learned about. I was already leaning towards, like, before my journey started, I was leaning towards the fact that I didn't trust the government anyway, to be fair.
Yes.
So it didn't take much convincing from me. But when you read, like, obviously the classic Bitcoin standards, when you read that and just learn how that the history of money and how it's been taken to grow. Even Bitcoin, though, like, Bitcoin's like 40 years, like the creation of Bitcoin's like 40 years old. Like from when they first started playing with the idea of digital cash, and like, I can't remember the exact brands. It was like eCash or something, like since the 70s. And like people just think like Bitcoin just like appeared, and then some guy just disappeared, which is also a reason people don't invest, which I find bizarre. Like that there's no one to point a finger at, when actually that is a feature of why it's so successful.
Absolutely.
But it can be frustrating, and that's why we're doing some interviews with the fans at the football club, to be fair, because I was hoping for some sort of backwards and forwards, and maybe get yourself interviewing some if you fancy. I need an interviewee.
I have a plan. I've got a gimbal. I've shown my assistant.
Nice.
That's going to work. Whether it works or not, I'm not sure, but I had that idea too.
So I'd like to speak to some football fans in Nottingham and just see what their opinion is. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to get the gist from a person. What do you think of it? What do you think it is? Do you care about it? If not, why? Do a bit of market research, I suppose, to why people aren't or are interested.
I think what would be really interesting is finding someone who didn't know about Bitcoin, who's got a VIP ticket, who watches the talks, and then seeing if anything's changed after they've witnessed that. I mean, sometimes it takes a while for these things to process, but it'd be interesting to see if, watching that, has made a difference, and what that would make a really good little mini film. I think.
Well, we're hoping to get I'm aiming for sort of 30-60 second clips with interviews with attendees and people just at the football, and any crossovers. But something which I really want to capture is obviously the speakers, an event highlight video, visitor interviews, just loads of stuff, really. Just capture as much as we can, so we've got a nice library of bits to use to promote the following year. That should be good.
Fantastic. Well, that sounds wonderful, and you've perfectly filled up my allotted time schedule, so thank you ever so much. Brilliant timing.
Thank you for having me.
And so my final question is normally, so what for you personally do you think will be the highlight of this event for you?
I'm interested just to see people's faces and reactions, and like I don't know if it's going to be, I personally think it's going to be heavily Bitcoiners already. I don't know what you think, but I don't know if there's going to be many new people. But at the same time, although we might not be introducing many new people, I hope there is, don't get me wrong, we might not be introducing many new people, it would give an opportunity for Bitcoiners already to learn more and discuss certain aspects, like what you guys speaking are talking about completely different things. And it just should be interesting for everyone to get together and discuss. Then later on as well. So it's mainly like understanding people's reactions to things, and like learning what didn't they know, what do they know now, and then later on the more social element where we can just spitball and talk ideas and concepts and that kind of thing.
Yeah, the chat's always the best bit by the bar.
Indeed.
But just to highlight that note, actually, I mean, this event has been structured around the newbies because we moved our Nottingham meetup to the local football club, and it was because the people were coming into the football club going, what's this Bitcoin thing? We were like, we need an event. So I think it will attract a lot of Bitcoiners, but there are going to be a lot of newbies who will be attending just for the football match.
Lovely.
And we've got a load of Bitcoin related games for the footballers, which we are hoping will help demonstrate how it works. So it's going to be super cool.
Yeah, we'll get some message of that. We'll get some really good stuff.
Yeah, I think it'll be great.
Exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for your time today. And guys, please like the video if you like it, and make a comment as well down below, because that all helps the algorithm. And so we have someone else lined up for tomorrow. We're going to be talking to Chris, our MC, in the evening, and possibly someone else if I can get them scheduled on time. They all vary in how quickly they respond to me. So look out for that tomorrow. All right, so I'm going to end it there. Good night, everybody, and see you again tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.